Welcome to the Rising Society podcast. I'm Shane.
And I'm Nico.
And we're going to start off tonight by talking about IQs.
Nice. I love it.
So IQ stands for intellectual quotient, right?
Correct.
And that's the kind of like standardized measure of intelligence. Mm-hmm. Well, it's very interesting. According to an article from studyfinds.org, I've never heard of them before. But according to them, IQ has dropped in America over the last 40 years.
I'm glad that's our source material. You're like some website I've never heard of before.
Well, it sounds pretty official. Studyfinds.org.
I mean, it does lead authority. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and you know as well as I do that if something is .org, that automatically means that it's trustworthy.
Solidifies it in trust,
Right?
100%.
Yep, 100%. Yep. So what do you think about that, Nico? Do you think IQ has actually dropped by in the last 40 years, basically the span of, or almost the span of both of our lives, or do you think that studyfinds.org is full of it?
I think it's a mixed bag. I don't think there's an easy way to answer that question. One, I think the way they measure IQs, pretty arbitrary for modern times. I mean, I don't agree with the metrics. I've taken an IQ test, and I'm off the charts, by the way. Super genius, I think it was. I think I came back at like the highest score you can come back at.
Yeah, you came out at like 1,000.
Yeah, like 10,000 maybe. No.
Yeah, like it was like 25,000, wasn't it? It was.
No. In all honesty, I think I got I don't think I got high at all. I think I got like a 113.
Okay, well that's still high. I mean that's still above average, which is good.
Yeah, I don't know why I said I think I got a 113. I got a 113. I don't.
Well, it's because yours and all of her IQs have dropped, and you're just having trouble remembering it, you know?
That's it. I don't know, man. I mean, just the way they measured it, the stuff I was going on, a lot of people, you got to have a better test, because a lot of kids I know, it's straight to cell phones to find answers, which is, of course, a bad thing, but we do have the world's knowledge in our pocket. The problem is as we covered last time and are going to continue covered, is there's so much false knowledge out there. I think there's just got to be a better way of measuring it.
Well, I don't think you can argue with the fact that we have a lot of people that are concentrating on just stupider things. Like, you know, people in the past may have concentrated they may have concentrated on some hobby that required intelligence, like, you know, knitting. You know, knitting is something that people used to do in their spare time, and that required some intelligence. Because, you know, you had to know how to stitch and everything. It's something I don't know how to do. But now we have people that are pronoun experts. Mm. You know, they're concentrating on, you know, zer self, clown self. They're concentrating on being experts in pronouns. But that makes them experts in nothing of value to the rest of us. And the thing is, there's not much analysis involved in being a pronoun expert.
No, I concur 100%. I think the problem is that as technology advanced, it freed up too much time, and we filled that with a lot of nonsense. But at the same time, I mean, it's catch-22. We don't need people that can knit anymore. It's not necessary. You and I can't afford 2-3 shirts a year. We could afford 2-3 shirts a week if we wanted to. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people are in the same position, and I would say we're just middle class. We're nothing special. It frees up that time and that labor force to go do other things. The problem is we're not doing other things. We're right. Filling it up with nonsense.
So, you know, this actually kind of reminds me of, you know, Thomas Jefferson and most of our founding fathers were very big advocates for literacy. But Thomas Jefferson in particular was a major advocate for literacy. Mm-hmm. And him and all of his peers, you know, our other founding fathers, a lot of very learned men, believed that if you trained the public to read, then they would automatically gravitate toward works of philosophy and great works of literature. Mm-hmm. You know, that they would gravitate toward history. They'd gravitate toward great theological works. And that it would end up leading to just a big expanse of the general public knowledge of useful information, you know, and like, you know, that there would be very vibrant public discourse about political issues, about about our livelihoods and all this kind of stuff. Well, the founding fathers were pretty successful in bringing literacy to a lot of people that were not literate, through the public education system at the time and everything. Well, they were actually Thomas Jefferson in particular was very disappointed at the end of his life because he was very upset at the fact that all these people knew how to read, but they weren't spending their time reading things that he believed were valuable to growing their intellects and things. They were concentrating on reading a bunch of gossip columns, things about horse racing, and just things that he kind of thought was just a bunch of like useless bullshit. And it disappointed him. And Jefferson kind of died very kind of bitter and angry at that particular at the outcome of the literacy movement in America.
No, I agree 100%.
And you can still see that today. A lot of people want to watch like Access Hollywood, and they want to read. They want to read all the gossip. They want to read all these. They want to read websites that have a bunch of like celebrity gossip and stuff on them, instead of concentrating on things that are lasting bodies of knowledge that are going to help them in life.
Absolutely. But see, I think that's the problem. It's in modern society. My biggest pet peeve. It's always this or that. You know what I mean? There's always that or. You can't pick both. And it's like Uncle Ben said, everyone knows the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. We literally have the world's knowledge in our pocket. Now, we're glued to these screens, and we spend hours a day upon Facebook, just useless crap going through it. We watch Netflix, we do all these things. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them in moderation, but that's where people invest all their time. Dude, you can find out there's nothing today that you can't watch a YouTube video of and at least become mildly effective in that area. I know nothing about cars, and I've worked on my car for the last 2 years by watching YouTube videos. I am not a mechanic by any means, and these aren't complex issues. I'm talking little things. I can go in them and be mildly effective in that area. You know what I mean? How are we not using this stuff? It's like garbage. People fill their time with garbage. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the cell phone's the problem. I think how we're using the cell phone's the problem. I don't think technology is to blame. It's our wielding of technology. It's our fault. That's my opinion.
So where do you think the technology is going?
What do you mean?
Just so remember how it was flip phones before. Well, actually, first it started with personal computers, right? Then eventually we got flip phones, and we got iPads, and we got all that kind of stuff. Now we have this. What's coming next? Do you think humans are going to become cyborgs or?
No. So funny enough, I actually know a couple people, because remember, I'm in sales, so I know a couple companies, boutique companies. I know larger companies have been doing this in scale for years and years and years, trying this stuff. But I know when they're implementing it. I don't want to name any names, but their next big thing is they sell. I'll say this: they sell automobiles, and I know that they're trying to go to a VR sales room. And I even know a lot of other companies. I know a nonprofit that they made their whole in-store is now you can't come in there. It went from people coming in and shopping and buying things to that store where they were coming to buy is now just a warehouse, and you virtually go in. They mapped it out, and everything's virtual, so you still walk around the store. It's clumsy. You got to still wear the stuff. You know what I mean? But you walk around the store, you literally, like almost with the damn thing, you pick the thing, and it pulls up all the data on that, like shirt, for instance. And you can see the sizes they have, the cost, the colors, and then you put it in your cart, come out, and you're back in the store, and you can walk around. So I think VR is like a clumsy version of virtual reality is going to be where this is going.
So are you referring to the metaverse by Mark Zuckerberg?
Is that by the Zucks, you mean? Yeah. So that's what I'm referring to. Yes.
So you're talking about about the metaverse. You're talking about Zuck Bucks. You're talking about all that kind of stuff. So, the only thing I'll say is that Zuckerberg thought and thinks that that's where the whole world is going. It hasn't panned out that way so far. In fact, it's been a catastrophic failure.
Well, it's going to be for a while. I mean, dude, the technology is just not there. Like I said, the two places I know that are implementing it on our firsthand experience, people still, at the end of the day, crave that human attention. I know we're getting more and more away, but people don't want to wear that shit on their head, man. They don't.
Well, and the reason I'll say I think that stuff is going to fail, at least I think it's going to fail to materialize the way Zuckerberg and all these other people are thinking it will, is just like what you said. It's lacking the human element. Mm-hmm. It's not grounded in reality, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to move us. They're trying to move us out of this objective reality that we all live in, this physical space. And they want to move us into this non-physical space, into this non-physical realm that's controlled by the false god of Mark Zuckerberg, or whoever would step into his shoes.
No, I once again, I hate to keep saying it, but I do agree with you to a certain extent. I think that the more time that
I love it that you agree with me. I know,
and it's so rare. Like, we haven't hit the issues where I don't agree with you at all, which is 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. But on this podcast, it seems to be leaning that way. I do believe that there is a war against the physical. And like I said, I don't conspiracy theory. I don't think it's intentional. When I say war, I think it's a movement against the physical to go into the virtual, because then you have the lack of control over the physical. And I think that's why they're pushing it so hard. If we don't have tangible physical things, then everything's kind of just zeros and ones. Mm-hmm. And if it's zeros and ones, that means it doesn't actually have a physical structure, which means that what's stopping someone from taking it? And I think this is why, though I love cryptocurrency, I like the application, I like the idea of what it can become. And I like, because I'm a libertarian. I like little government to no government.
Yep.
I do like the applications. I like smart contracts. I like NFTs.
It's decentralized.
I like NFTs. I like the thought behind them. It all fascinates me. But the lack of... Dude, I've watched people get burned. Not just on rug pulls, stuff like that. I'm not talking about like just... I'm talking like I've seen people lose their wallets like that. We've seen collapses of whole companies.
And I've known people that have lost their passwords.
Yes.
To their wallets.
They had like cold wallets.
Yep. And then they straight up, and then they can never access that money again.
It's just gone.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like I'm speaking on both sides of my mouth. Like, I'm like, oh, I hate government, I hate all this stuff. I will never, ever, ever say we need regulation on those things, because the second government steps in, it's over. Now we literally have zero control, not even over the imaginary shit. They're going to take that hostage too.
I agree with you that I think all the problems begin in the economy when the government seizes control of money.
100%.
And that actually kind of leads us into today, which is Wednesday. Is it March the 22nd?
22nd.
The Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, the chief of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve Board raised the Federal Reserve interest rate by 0.25%. They raised it from 4.75% to 5%. And that's the baseline interest rate. That's called the Federal Reserve discount window. Basically, what it means is that it's going to cost banks more to borrow money.
That's what they're lending.
So that's going to cost us more.
Correct.
Yeah. So then that's going to cost us more to borrow money. Mm-hmm. It is going to end up. So this is my take on it. It's going to, the whole reason that they're doing it is they printed too much money. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they increase interest rates is so that they can try to start sopping up all this extra cash that's floating around, that's causing all the prices to go up, that's contributing to the shortages of things at the stores. We talked last week about how poultry barns and stuff and egg facilities and stuff. We've just had really bad luck over the past few years. They just randomly exploded, and then they've had to slaughter a whole bunch of chickens because they caught the bird flu and stuff. But one of the big contributing factors to all the problems with the shortages and the increasing prices, the inflation, is that too much money has been printed. So what the Fed is doing is they're raising interest rates. And what that does is it makes it more expensive for people to borrow money. It makes it so that people's interest rates go up on everything from auto loans to mortgages to credit cards. And then for businesses to borrow money or for businesses to expand, if they're going to borrow money, they have to pay more interest. And what that does, it's removing money that's circulating out of the system.
Well, it siphons it, right? I mean, you got to
Yeah, it's siphoning it out. But one thing I'd like to point out is last week we had the bailout of the Silicon Valley Bank, which the governor of California, California being your original home state,
the state I was born in.
yeah,
correct?
the state you were born in, but you know you were born, you lived there for a few years, and you were like, I got to get the hell out of here.
Gotta get the hell out of here.
So you were like, well, what's the furthest away I can get from this place? And you're like, Florida, and you're like, I'm going there. And
palm
also,
trees, baby.
Yeah. You were like, there are palm trees here. I want to go somewhere where there's palm trees.
There, yep.
And I don't want to go to Mississippi. I don't want to go to Alabama. I want to go to Florida. So that's where you ended up. Now, the thing is that Silicon Valley Bank, that bank failed, and the FDIC, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which is a government body, they backstopped all of the bankrupt accounts, right? Now, it's kind of ironic that the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates so they can try to rein in all this excess money. At the same time, the Federal Reserve is printing a whole shitload of money so that they're going to print and put into circulation so that they can prevent all these rich people at this bank from losing out on some of their deposits.
Because they're only insured up to what, $250,000?
Yeah. So FDIC insures people's accounts up to $250,000. Now remember that people can always insure their bank accounts privately with insurance companies to make up for the difference. Like there were some accounts at that Silicon Valley Bank that had like $400 million in them. I mean, in fact, I read an article a couple days ago. It's estimated that around 90% of the accounts at that Silicon Valley Bank had deposits that exceeded the $250,000 threshold.
Holy shit! 90% of the accounts.
Yeah, because a lot of the depositors at this bank, one of them was Netflix, and Netflix was the one that had like $400 and something million in one of their accounts, and so it's interesting to me when you step back and look at it that the Fed is saying we have to raise interest rates on everybody in the economy, businesses to working people. You're going to have to pay more interest on your credit card loans, on your credit card debt, and on your auto loans and your mortgages and stuff. But when there's a bank that caters to some of the wealthiest people in the country at Silicon Valley, it was called Silicon Valley Bank. The government is going to say, you know what? We're going to bail these people out, and if what we have to do is print a whole bunch of money to do it, we're prepared to do that, and that's what they were prepared to do. And that's what they did. So, and they're saying, oh, it doesn't really matter because what we'll do to sop up that extra money is we'll just raise interest rates more down the road.
Yeah, no, good plan.
Yeah.
Good plan.
And so really, I think when you step back and you look at it, what you can clearly see is the Fed, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Biden White House, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary. They're in the business now of picking winners and losers. And what they have done is they've said they're picking the wealthiest people in the country and some of the wealthiest businesses in the country that happen to be based in California, in Silicon Valley. I didn't mean to imply that's somehow where you are based
Valley,
or something.
Yeah.
Which that's not even the part of California that you're from.
Not even close.
But I just think it's interesting it's just interesting to notice that those are the people that they're bailing out. And Jerome Powell, when he testified before Congress last week, said one of the ways we're going to know that we have raised interest rates enough is when we start seeing unemployment rates go up.
Nice.
So I can tell you this, Nico, is when wealthy people and the wealthiest people in the country who happen to bank at particular banks, if they start feeling a little bit of pain, this government, this Federal Reserve, what they're going to do is they're going to intervene to alleviate those people's pain.
Yeah, but Shane, this is the party of egalitarianism.
If you fail, or if I fail because we make a stupid decision, the Biden administration, Federal Reserve Board, Janet Yellen, all those people, they're not going to step in to try to alleviate our suffering. They're just going to look at us and they're just going to say, oh, well, you just need to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Now, for the record, I think if a business makes poor decisions, like you deposit all of your money at a bank, deposits in excess of $250,000, and you're stupid enough not to ensure the gap in coverage that you have from the FDIC, or if you're stupid enough just not to break it up into a bunch of bank accounts. You put $250,000 into one bank account, then put $250,000 into another bank account, and so on and so on and so on. If that's not something you're willing to do, and you're willing to roll the dice and take a risk on putting putting $400 million like Netflix did into a bank account that is only covered in the event of a bank failure for $250,000. If you're stupid enough to make that decision, a CFO of a company or something, then you know what? You should have to suffer with the consequences, because if you or I were foolish enough to make a decision like that, I'll tell you one thing: Janet Yellen's not going to step in to try to bail either one of us out.
Shane, you sound like a crazy person. If I was to break that up into $250 allotment of accounts, how many?
250,000.
250,000. How many accounts is that, man? At $400 million.
It would be a lot, but you know what? If
Netflix does a buyout, they're like, yes, we would love to do that. Can we pay for that with 189,000 accounts?
So the thing I'm saying is what they could do logistically is really one of two things. One, take out an insurance policy to cover yourself, so that gap of however much you have, that's between however much you have and the $250,000 threshold is covered by one insurance policy, or you can break it up into several accounts. But
7 million.
Yeah, but I can tell you what is if you make a bad choice, if you make a stupid decision and you do not cover those funds, then sorry, too bad, so sad, you're going to have to suffer.
They're picking losers and winners, but this is supposed to be the party that represents, the people that are being suppressed. You have your minorities, or your poor, or your underprivileged in some way. By no means am I a conservative. That's not what I'm saying. But it seems like it's come down to this team versus that team. And if Joe Biden was worried about all these things, why is he bailing out multi-millionaires and billion-dollar companies? You know what I mean? Just
100%. Well, and I think we ought to move on to talk about the upcoming Trump indictment.
Oh, 100%.
Because that is something that's going to be very interesting to see what ends up happening. So, just to kind of zoom out and look at it, Donald Trump, the whole Stormy Daniels thing, who Donald Trump affectionately called Horseface. She was paid $100,000 by Donald Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, and then he was reimbursed by the Trump organization for paying her like hush money. Then she didn't stay hushed. She came out and violated their little deal that they had.
We call that a breach of contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Going on.
Yeah,
record.
Completely. Well, now the state of New York is going after, or the DA in New York, who campaigned on going after Donald Trump. He is going after Trump. He has taken a misdemeanor in the state of New York and is turning it into a felony. Basically, he's taking a lower level crime and turning it into a bigger level crime. And he's going after Donald Trump as if this is a bigger level crime. And just to look at him, I forget what that district attorney's name is, but he has lowered felony crimes from felonies to misdemeanors in New York, so he can go easier on criminals.
But not on Donald Trump.
Right, not on Donald Trump. He's flipped it on Donald Trump and said, "Aha, you've committed a misdemeanor. Well, we're going to elevate it to a felony just because I say so." So the thing is, we're kind of on indictment watch right now, like, to see if Donald Trump is going to end up getting indicted, and if he does, I think Donald Trump's mugshot and a photograph of him in handcuffs, I think that will be his ticket to get back to the White House again.
Because virtually, if you look at the climate, it's pretty dead for Donald Trump. There's not. Even conservatives are like, okay, that's not what we want. You know what I mean?
Well, some conservatives. Yeah.
You're right. There's still a lot of people out there that I'm talking mass majorities though. They're like, all right, we want to go a different direction. This will single-handedly catapult him to the top of the line on the Republican ticket.
Completely.
How did they not know that? And then on the opposite end, you have people on the opposite end of the spectrum that are like, don't arrest him. It will only, exactly our point, make him more popular. Well, that's not how the law works. It doesn't matter if it'll make him more popular. Is he guilty or is he not guilty? You can't not charge someone if they're actually guilty of a crime because you think politically it will advance their career. It doesn't work like that. Like, that's an insane philosophy to have from the liberals.
The problem is that district attorney and really the liberals across the board, they can't help themselves. They cannot help themselves because the thing is, they hate Donald Trump and Donald Trump hates them, and the two of them are they're like Tom and Jerry. They're like the Coyote and the Roadrunner. They just can't help it. Like they're Bam Bam and whoever the other little kid was in the Flintstones.
Pebbles.
Yeah, Pebbles and Bam Bam. It's just the two. They can't resist one another. And so they're going to go after Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump is going to go after them. Remember, like Donald Trump saying, "Oh, lock her," about Hillary, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. Well, this is a never-ending cycle. But just objectively, I'll say this: as somebody that really I describe myself as being like a political atheist. The thing that fascinates me though is all these bureaucrats, all these heads of the Defense Department, all these lifelong deep state government people. I love the idea of Donald Trump being their boss again. I think that is it's divine retribution. It's beautiful. It is such a beautiful thing because the thing is, they deserve him and he deserves them.
That's the thing about Donald Trump, man. I do got to say this. Outside of George Bush and a couple gems, you never knew what the guy was going to say next. And I'm not even a huge Donald Trump fan, but I do got to say he kept me on my toes. Mm-hmm. And when he would come out, I'm like, what the hell is he going to say next? And that's what I love about this is I wouldn't even put it past him if we find out, let's say how this plays down, they arrest him, no charges are found. I would, if I woke up one morning and I heard this on the news or I read it, or if he came up and told me himself, I wouldn't be like, no way. If he's paying the mayor of New York to try him, to get arrested, to, catapult him up to this thing, I put nothing past the guy. He is a brilliant negotiator. He's a tactician. He plays dumb, and everyone buys into that narcissism at its face value. The thing is at the end of the day, the guy, they hate him because they like him. They hate that they like him. They had to pretend they're repulsed by him.
They hate
that's
him.
How charming he is.
They hate him because they ain't him.
That's they hate him because they ain't him.
And the thing is, Donald Trump. People will say, "Oh, Donald Trump is this or that or whatever." I think he's the greatest entertainer of our lifetimes.
It's right there, you nailed it.
I think he's the greatest entertainer, and outside of that, I guess there's some give and take there, but I think he's the greatest entertainer of our lifetimes, and he's also the greatest troll of our lifetimes, because nobody can get these people like the left to look any more stupid than Donald Trump does. like that the day of his inauguration in 2016, the thing I'll never in January of 2017, the thing I will never forget was that woman. She was wearing like a light green shirt and she had glasses, and
the screaming
yeah,
lady.
yeah, and she's like, no,
Yeah.
no, like that captures what Donald Trump does to them. He broke their brain, and he continues to break their brains even worse.
Hillary Clinton wouldn't even come out. Remember?
Right.
Like everyone was crying in her stands. Like you have thousands of people like in tears. They think the world is over. And she wouldn't even come out and cover them because that's how outraged she was that Donald Trump got elected. And I would love to see that again. Not like I said, not that I'm a fan of the guy, but I will go on record right this second and say in my lifetime, and I was born in 90, in my lifetime, I think Donald Trump, and it pains me to say this, is probably the greatest president we've had to date. And that's insane. That is insane. That should tell you how crazy the American government is, the political climate is in this country, that's the greatest president we've had so far.
Well, and something else I'll add to that is, I think he's the American. I don't think there's any American that's got a bigger pair of balls than Donald Trump.
Dude, he bounces around on those things.
Now, internationally, I think the man with the biggest with the biggest pair of balls in the world is easily Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir Putin, hands down.
Well, and the thing is,
balls.
and it's not just a metaphor of Vladimir Putin. You can look at the pictures of Vladimir Putin, where he is physically sitting at one end of a long table, and then
like six other people are at the other end of the table.
Yeah. The six other people, they're all like clustered at the other end of the table, and it's just logistically, a lot of people think, oh, it's just a power play or something. No, it's that his balls are that big. that they physically they have to sit on the other side of the table.
Could you see him and Trump at one of those like super long tables? They're just both at one end. It's under that table. Just two huge testicles.
Exactly.
Just sacks.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you 100%, man. Those guys just don't give a shit, and I think that's what the world. Well, I'm glad I got that. I think the world needs more characteristics of people that just say what they mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come out, upset who you're going to upset. Your supporters are going to love you. Your haters are going to hate you. And then just do it. Now, he did say a lot of crazy shit. He was going to do all this gusto stuff. But, man, the stuff he did say he was going to do that he did execute on, I don't know how you could hate the guy. The South Korea, North Korea thing, he dropped less bombs than anyone else. He didn't get into any new wars. NAFTA.
Like reversing NAFTA, and also to remember the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Oh yeah,
we got out of that too.
Thank God.
Remember Hillary Clinton said that she was going to get us into that, and working class people were like, no. And Hillary Clinton just said, you guys are just stupid. That's the only reason that you don't agree with the TPP.
Exactly.
But
that they're dumb.
Yeah. But the only reason that common people like us were opposed to the TPP is because we're the class of people that will that don't have $250,000 or more in our bank accounts, that will never be bailed out by the government, like Silicon Valley Bank was.
And that's the thing. I mean, I know he's the boogeyman of the hour, but if you take that same lens and you apply it to Vladimir Putin, dude, he has told the West to go to hell. And he's going with China right now, and he's like, no, we're not going to use the petrodollar. And no, I will not accept euros. You will pay me in rubles. And if that's not fine, we'll take yen. And a matter of fact, we're going to start using yen to do business with all our African allies, with our South American allies. He goes 2/3 of their business is done ruble to yen anyways. So now they're just going to make that 100%. He doesn't give a shit.
Well, and the thing is, we also, in all fairness, we also made it a lot easier for the Europeans not to trade with the Russians, not to buy their gas and stuff, because we blew up the damn pipeline.
Well, I mean, dude, I'm just gonna say this: they keep going down this path. There's gonna be some cold winters in Europe. Okay, that's all I'm saying. And those are our children. So imagine,
Those are our offspring.
Yeah, those are our children.
It's
a museum that they live in of once upon greatness.
Yep.
That is no more, and now it houses our bastardized children. So yeah, no, we'll be bailing them out. I mean, look how much money we've given to Ukraine already, but we can't solve any of the problems here in America. I do find that very fascinating.
So, what do you think about the Chinese proposing this peace plan for Ukraine? and the Chinese are proposing a ceasefire. The Chinese are proposing a negotiation about territory, really kind of going back to what were called the Minsk Accords that brought the fighting to an end in the Ukraine between the Russians and the Ukrainian government in 2014. What do you think about the Chinese peace deal and then us torpedoing it like we did the peace deal a year ago?
Oh, 100%. It can't come from China. That would be unacceptable. The only terms that are going to be acceptable is ones that are set by the Americans. Because, like you said, these are our children. We have to make sure that this conflict is resolved on our terms. And we've said this before, you and I, in many talks. We are willing to fight this war to the last Ukrainian.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter what that looks like. It's no sweat off our balls.
So so Anthony Blinken and all of our merry group of fools that are running the country, they're pitching a fit. The fact that the Chinese, President Xi of China went and met with Putin, and then President Xi is going to meet with Zelensky, and Zelensky has said, "I will meet with President Xi of China, and I'll hear what he has to say." And President Xi has even President Zelensky has even indicated that he's open to the Chinese peace terms. He's not married to anything, but at the end of the day, we are telling the Ukrainians, you better not do that, because what the United States is doing a lot of double talk, because what we keep on saying is, well, this is the Ukraine's decision. The Ukraine will stop fighting whenever they choose to stop fighting. The Ukraine will do this. The Ukraine will do that, all on their terms. We are merely there to support them. And I think this makes it clear as day that it's not really the Ukrainians' choice. It's our country's choice. And I think that this whole proposed peace by China and us, the United States rejecting it on behalf of the Ukrainians, it just kind of goes to reveal this whole thing as being just a proxy war.
Well, 100%. I'm sure that Zelensky is looking for, willing to sit down for any negotiations at this point, because he's put two and two together. He knows that the checks are going to keep coming in, right? Because we're going to have to rebuild Ukraine back, even if the war stops, right? That's going to be the whole thing. And we're going to have to, even no matter what the negotiations say, he knows that now we have a financial interest in Ukraine, and we're going to keep doing what we always do. We're going to invest in that. But he knows he's also on a clock, because in about another month, those ass whoopings are going to commence again after this winter break. And anyone that thinks the Ukrainians are just out there just destroying Russians like it's Rocky IV, all right, it's not. And he knows that as soon as those Russians start rolling in again, they're just going to lose more of their country. So, yeah, I'm sure he is willing to sit down and talk to whoever will listen.
Yeah, this is not a Ukrainian march to victory like with CNN and MSNBC and even in Fox News and all the rest of them are trying to portray it as being.
No.
So why don't we talk? So something that I find to be the most interesting about this whole deal with China going into Ukraine and wheeling and dealing with Zelensky, and then going to Russia, wheeling and dealing with President Putin, and also the whole BRICS organization of all these countries that are going to have free trade with one another, and they're basically working toward creating a new world order that is not based upon the United States being the center and kind of like the beating heart of the world order. It's based upon it's based on a decentralized model where you would have
your regional powers.
Right. Yeah. Regional powers, a multipolar world. And that stands in contrast to the world that we have known our entire lives, which is a unipolar world that is ruled by the United States. And it's very similar to the world that the British Empire ruled over, leading up, really like the century leading up to World War II. And World War II in the following years, that was the decline and end of the British Empire, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing today. We're seeing the lead up,
correct,
to the end of the American uniparty rule over the world. And I think we really have one of two options. We can either we can have an amicable end to this world order and a peaceful transition of power to the new system, whatever that ends up being, the multipolar, regional system, or it could be a bloodbath, which it seems like the people that are in charge of our country are opting for the second option. They want it to be a bloodbath. They're willing to go and fight. They're willing to wage this proxy war in the Ukraine to try to bleed the Russians, and then they've even said that they're willing to go and fight a war in Taiwan.
Well, of course,
to go and fight the Chinese. But the thing is, that is not going to lead. I don't see, and I could be just a complete fool. I just don't see how on the other end of that leads to the continuation of the unipolar rule of the United States over the world. I think that still leads us to a multipolar regional world, but the United States in a much weaker position, and a United States that is viewed in a very negative light as being the aggressor and a warmonger, which there are already enough countries that view the United States as being an aggressor and a warmonger.
I don't know if there's any that don't view us that way.
Yeah, but there are still countries that view the United States as still being an inherently as having that the good outweighs the bad. Mm-hmm. That the United States, love them or hate them, they're still in a position where if you were to lobby them or you were to ask for their help, they might be able to intervene on your behalf to bring peace to your region, or they might just bring all out war. Yeah, you never really know. But I guess the United States has kind of taken a role, sort of like an abusive father in the world. You really never quite know what the United States is going to do. Mm-hmm. But if you really need help and you're desperate, then you might go and knock on Daddy Sam's door.
Oh,
and you don't know what'll happen. Daddy Sam might give you a handout, give you the money that you need, or he might just deck you right in the face.
I do got to say, there's not another country in the world that I would want to live in over the United States. And
no, me neither.
I'll use your abusive father example. You can stay here and get the beating, but at least you're getting dinner. You go to these other countries, you're getting the beating and you're going to starve. So as a citizen, at least, yeah, of course, I'm a libertarian. There's a lot I don't like about the United States that I would love to change. But at the end of the day, as a citizen, not from the governmental structure and our, disregard and total, that's the word I'm looking for when you failed. We failed being the world stewards because we were the superpower. You nailed it on the head. We were the world steward of money. We're the world steward of power, and I think we've abused those things. We failed miserably. But there's not another country I would want to live in.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to live in Russia. I don't want to live in England. I feel like England's the shittier version of us, the much shittier version.
And that's
of us.
Putting it nicely.
Yeah, nicely. I can't think of it. No, Australia, no thanks. You know what I mean? Love the way you guys talk. Your government sucks. No, so yeah, I do agree with you. I do think that this ends with a lot more of Ukraine being liberated by the Russians and new countries coming there, Ukraine being a lot smaller. I do think it leads to those regional powers, and I do think America is weakened by this. And I do think it leaves us in an even worse light because people are going to realize that we're not that, stainless, that steel 440 steel that the world thought. I think it's going to show our cracks in our foundation. Even though I think China's a paper tiger at the end of the day as well, I think they're playing the long game. And I think America looks at 10 years in the future, and that's how we plan out. And I think China looks at 100 years.
Yeah.
I really do. The moves they make, it's amazing to see that they're willing to go have a resource war. They're doing it through finances. They're very strategic in the way they're doing it. It's never going to come down to us duking it out with China. I don't believe that. I don't care. They could have 10 billion people. I just don't think that's the way it's going to go. I think they're being very tactful on this. Very tactful.
I think you're right.
Yeah. I usually am.
China is a net food importer. Russia is a net food exporter. The United States is a net food exporter. Canada is a net food exporter. So the benefit that a lot of countries have had since World War II, really since the American system was rolled out throughout the entire world, where the dollar reigns as king, and the United States is the beating heart of the entire global economy. It has allowed, because everybody exchanges internationally in dollars, what it has allowed is for countries that otherwise would have been involved in regional conflicts for resources, it has allowed them not to really worry so much, to where they can just concentrate on specializing in something and being able to trade for what they don't have.
Correct.
Now we're seeing the breakdown of that system. I would largely say as a result of the actions of our country, of the United States, because we're weaponizing the system. We're weaponizing the system against the Russians. We're teetering on the brink of trying to weaponize the system against the Chinese, and in doing so, we're pushing the Russians and the Chinese together. So the thing that's interesting about the BRICS countries, Brazil, South America, Russia, China, India, these are countries that have massive populations, but together they're a resource powerhouse. These are countries that mine a lot of elements. These are countries that produce a lot of food. These are countries that are very, very industrialized, very complex, and very prosperous countries when you put them together. What one doesn't have, the other one has a lot of, and vice versa. So the thing that is concerning is it almost seems like the American empire views itself as being something that is permanent and can never disappear from the world, that the world needs us more than we need them.
Correct.
And the problem is that's not the case. Now, you mentioned like China being kind of like a paper tiger earlier. I agree with that. And in fact, when you look at the breakdown of the Chinese military, of the Chinese Navy, what things the Chinese have been investing in, what things the Chinese are buying a lot of and building out, it's interesting. China has the largest Navy in the world. A lot of people don't realize that. But their Navy, it's not made up like our Navy is of ships that would allow them to project their power to the other side of the world like our Navy.
No, it's like 10,000 bass boats, right?
Yes. Well, not just that, but it's actually, you could actually say China's Navy, it's really like the world's largest Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And that's because the Chinese they're not interested in sending aircraft carriers from China into the Atlantic Ocean. What they're interested in doing is blowing any country that would try to encroach into like the South China Sea, to blow them to smithereens with their like smaller battleships and things. And they have a lot of like rockets and stuff like that they can launch from their coastline. And that's a lot of the weaponry that the Chinese have concentrated on. It's very defensive. And what it looks like, and it looks like the way things are developing is that we're betting the farm on Taiwan, on building a stranglehold on Taiwan and making Taiwan an American outpost to really block the Chinese into the South China Sea, to make it so that they can't expand outward. And we're telling the Chinese there's not even any wiggle room for any negotiation here. This is just the way it is. We are the rulers of the world, and you are not. And the blowback has been the BRICS countries, China, India, Russia, all these other ones. They have all said, we do not like this current system, and we want to change it. We want one that's all based on like regional powers. Now, the downside of the regional powers, like I mentioned before, is you have a lot of countries that produce a lot of a particular thing, but then they don't produce any of other things that are essential. You have countries that may not produce much food, but they have a lot of like iron ore that they can mine and rare earth metals and stuff like that. So the problem is with the breaking the world up into the more regional powers. I think you're going to end up seeing more sustained local warfare.
Oh, yeah.
And really, the system we have, it's the best for us because we're Americans. But the system we have is one that promotes a more peaceful world order. But the problem is that we've weaponized it,
Correct.
and it's falling apart because we've weaponized it. We've been very bad stewards.
100%. And that's the thing is, with everything going on right now, with the weakening of the dollar, like you were saying, and pushing the BRICS together, China has a huge reserve of American dollars. We all know that. Well, with everything going on, in the way that it's shaping up, they have to get rid of those dollars. But the only thing they can do to get rid of those dollars is buy American shit. So I perceive in the next 10 years a lot of land, water reserves, stuff like that. They're going to buy a lot of our infrastructure. It's going to be Chinese owned. I'm not kidding, I could see Chinese companies buying shit tons of land and becoming almost like landlords I don't know if they're going to get into like, residential or anything like that, but I could see Chinese companies buying swaths of land in America. I would rather sit on the land in America than have US dollars. I would rather sit on water reserves. I'd rather have areas that have natural resources. And I think that's where they're going to dump a lot of those US dollars. It's just buying stuff up. And I think they're going to wait just in time for our economy to get real rocky, as I think it's going to happen. And then they're going to, get a nice investment on that money, because why the hell would they want to keep it?
Right.
It doesn't make sense anymore to keep US dollars. And I think that's
better just go for the resources.
They're very strategic, very strategic. They're going to buy our resources with our own money. I think that's smart.
Well, in the question will be, what will the United States do in the future? Let's say that the multipolar world comes about. Mm-hmm. The United States is no longer the beating heart of the entire world economy. It's still a very influential country because, just across the board, the United States is either the most or one of the most blessed countries as far as resources goes. Mm-hmm. So the United States will never be a small player in the world. But the question is, what will the United States look like in a world where China and Russia are the lords of their domain? Europe will still be dominated by the United States because they're just children running around inside of a museum that was once great, but they're not great anymore. You've got South America. Brazil will be the unchallenged, lord of South America.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, but the United States will still assert dominance because we have the Monroe Doctrine, which states that it doesn't matter if you happen to think you're a country that rules yourself in the Western Hemisphere, but we actually rule you.
If you don't believe that, ask Mexico.
Exactly. Yeah.
100%.
Oh, they've been down that road many times.
Many times.
Well, and Cuba too, and a lot of the Caribbean islands, and really a lot of the South American countries, because we foment revolutions. We fomented many revolutions down in that part of the world, lots of times, over and over and over again.
South America's our favorite one to mess with.
Oh yeah,
it's just so convenient to just do whatever we want down there.
Yep.
So we'll send like two CIA agents just and topple their whole government.
Yeah.
Just through espionage, man. We don't even.
And the thing is,
wild.
And we didn't even do it for any reason. We just did it. We just did it to have something to do. We just did it for fun.
We were just bored.
Yeah.
It was you had the 80s, and we're just like, oh, why not? I'm sure all the guys that were doing these revolutions were on mountains of cocaine. They were just doing coke, and they're like, hey, how can we make this fun? Just to raise money so we can go to other places in the world and do the same shit for no reason. Yeah, no, that's America's specialty for sure.
Well, so there is a quote that I wrote down.
Oh God.
It's by George Orwell from 1984. It's a pretty common quote. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And what I'd have to say, it's kind of funny. I think that the beginning portion of that quote and the last part of that quote kind of summarizes what we've talked about. War is peace. The whole Ukraine peace deal thing. Mm-hmm. You know, we are trying to torpedo the acceptance of even just a mere ceasefire brokered by the Chinese, because what we're saying is, oh no, the current state of affairs there, war is peace. Mm-hmm. And if the Chinese are able to broker some kind of not even a peace deal, just even like a basic ceasefire, and people were to like stop for just a week, shooting each other and blowing each other up, then that would be an act of war. You know,
of course.
And then the last part, ignorance is strength. You know, remember we began talking about the IQ levels in the United States and how they have fallen, and they keep on falling because people are just into stupid shit now. There's really no other way to put it. But it just seems like as time goes on, people are embracing ignorance and they're proud of it.
They almost like pigs wallowing in shit. Mm-hmm. It's more convenient. I don't want to use the word convenient. It's preferable to be ignorant. Mm-hmm. Because then you can claim no responsibility. You can just be like, I didn't know. I don't know. And dude, I mean, a lot of this, like we talk about it like willy-nilly, but a lot of this shit is petrifying. It's scary, man. Like if this is shit you thought about while you were trying to go to bed at night, dude, if you watch a scary movie and you're like, oh, did I see something in the shadows? Dude, that pales in comparison to the shit going on in the world right now. Mm-hmm. It would keep you up all night. Dude, the scariest thing in the shadows is governments. It is this world stuff, and you feel helpless because you're one person. What are you going to do about it? Why should you worry about it? I can't do anything about it. You know what? I'm just going to be ignorant on it. Why wouldn't I be? What's going to change? And that's right where they want you, right where you need to be. Just go to sleep. Don't worry about the shadows.
And what they want you doing is supporting bombing other people in the name of democracy, right?
100%.
It's all about democracy.
All about democracy.
You know, but like in the case of Uganda, remember I mentioned that to you earlier, and you said that it was just boring shit. But
I don't know if those were my words.
Well, you didn't say it in Spanish, but in Uganda, it was either today or it was yesterday. The Ugandan parliament reaffirmed their bans on LGBTQIA plus
to the second power
lifestyles, mm-hmm. which I basically sodomy laws, making sodomy, reaffirming that sodomy is illegal, and also more than half of the African countries have bans on sodomy. Just an FYI. But Tony Blinken, our Secretary of State, and a lot of the other little merry band of fools that are running our country have said that they are going to actively work to undermine that law in Uganda that was democratically passed. Mm-hmm. Because we don't just support democracy. You know, the United States is not in the business of supporting like democracy in terms of like the will of the people. We only support democracy when people come up with the right answer, right?
100%.
And so in Uganda, they happen to come up with the wrong answer.
It was not correct.
Yeah. So we are actively right now working to undermine that law, to overturn it. And it's also interesting to note that recently, like in the last few weeks or maybe last month, there was the big election in Nigeria, and our State Department sent people like Stacey Abrams, Tony Blinken was wheeling and dealing and stuff in that election. We were interfering in that election, trying to garner our desired results.
Well, you got to remember, because it's all about imperiousness. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do anymore. It matters what you say. Actions are irrelevant. It's not the daily put it forward. It's what you say. What you say is the most important thing. You just need to feel it into existence. Because I actually watched an interview on, I believe it was Uganda, and they were interviewing, I believe it was the last president, when they were talking about these changes that were going to, and then I think you said it just got passed, right? Mm-hmm.
It was like them reaffirming the sodomy laws.
Because it was the president before, and they asked him, and they're like, hey, in Uganda, you have these like hate laws, basically, these insert every letter laws here. And he was like, yeah, but those were voted on by the Ugandan people. And they were like, yeah, but what do you think on that? And he kind of dodged, like politicians do, and he goes, I think that my responsibility is to the people of Uganda. And he goes, and I think the most important thing that I need to worry about is, and I'm pulling this number out of my ass, so don't like comment and fact check. Insert actual number here. He's like, my concern is, why don't 40% of my people have adequate food supply? He goes, I'm not really worried about the other ones. He goes, I can tackle this one, and then I can worry about the feel-good pieces. He goes, and if the people of Uganda want to reverse it, then they can democratically vote on it. He goes, my job right now is to trying to get enough food to my people. Infrastructure, education, illiteracy rates. These are things I need to worry about as a president. He goes, those other things we can talk about. He goes, and that he's basically saying, like, so people are just so unrealistic. Like, well, there is no importance levels on things. Those things don't matter. This one's just as important as the rest. No, it's not. If your population's starving, it doesn't matter if someone could get married or not. And I know that sounds cold-hearted. It sounds like I'm unsympathetic. I'm very empathetic to those guys. Hell, I'm a libertarian. The second that you took, the church out of marriage and you let the state run it, I don't think you can discriminate on who can get married. And I stand by that. And that's coming from a Catholic. The church no longer plays that role. The government took that role. And as soon as the government did it, who the hell are they to say what can and cannot, So I'm actually with that. But if we were all starving, I think that maybe the conversation needs to shift into a couple more, to other areas. And that's what the president of Uganda stood by, and I actually respect him for that. I watched the interview, and it was, he was pretty hard-nosed on it. Did not give his opinion, though. Would not give his opinion on the matter.
Hey, you got to respect the man for that.
He said Uganda voted.
It sounds like he believes in democracy and the will of the people, which I've got my own issues with the concept of democracy, which maybe we'll get into that sometime in the future. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't think it's the perfect system that CNN and MSNBC and stuff try to portray it as being. But the way I see it is you're either in favor of the consensual will of the people, or you're not. Mm-hmm. And don't sit here and say out of one side of your mouth that you're in favor of democracy and that you're willing to go and like murder people and bomb them overseas and stuff in the name of democracy. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, when people democratically arrive at the wrong answer that you don't agree with, then you're going to try to work to actively work to try to undermine their decision. No, you don't get to do that.
No.
And I think this is probably a good chapter for us to close on.
I agree, because it leads us onto the next one. I think that might be a great topic. The negatives and positives of democracy, because people throw that word around, but did they actually know? With the IQ level so low, maybe that's something we should look into.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
What does it mean?
And that's the thing. As the IQ level devolves and gets lower and lower and lower and lower, people are going to understand what big words like democracy mean less and less and less.
Because people always say that, right? Oh, that person's a communist. This person's a fascist. Oh, we believe in democracy. Are we a republic? Are we not a republic? What the hell is going on?
But the thing is, when you have a low IQ, you don't understand what any of it means.
Well, that's okay, because you can just Google it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll come to the same answer, right? Google is good. I like Google. All right.
Yeah, Google's good as long as the algorithm likes you.
Well, no, as long as you come to the result that you're supposed to. Remember that.
Yeah.
It's always the result you're supposed to get to, not the answer. All right. Yeah, no, I think we should stop it there, right?
All right, so next one we'll talk about democracy.
Yeah, beautiful. Good episode,
All right.
man. I
Sounds
love it.
good.